Okay, so what are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about OS Dev. www.osdev.org. Okay, well, this story is about interrupts. I mostly don't use interrupts because they're too difficult to, you have to do a lot of work to find which one is the right one to use. Anyway, let's see what this story is talking about. Show us your linker script. I wrote my own compiler, and it doesn't have a linker. It doesn't have a linker, and it doesn't have a make. But you do have, I guess you could call it a script. So, in the kernel directory, there's a project file, and if you put something in exe, then that executes at compile time. So whenever you compile this file, it executes this code, and there are if you do find directory -exe, there are several spots in the kernel where it executes code. That's how the configuration is accomplished. If you want to know how you compile, let's go to the compiler directory. Okay, there's two binary files, kernel.bin and compiler.bin. So if you say find file /bin, there's kernel.bin in the root directory, and there's compiler.bin in the compiler directory. And these others are nothing to speak of. When you're making a CD-ROM, you make your own kernel.bin and you put it separate. There's an undocumented command called compile. I decided my users don't need to do binary files. Let's see if this works. Okay, so there's not a make tool, but just to help people get familiar, I made a command called makeall, and it compiles the compiler and it compiles the kernel with the cmp command. So there are not any object files. Everything is, doesn't that sound ridiculous? You see, in the old days, a mainframe had 100 users, and they didn't want anybody to use very much memory. But now, it's not really a problem to do all the code at once, at least if you have a small project. Anyway, so I don't use a linker. I don't have a linker. I wrote the compiler myself, and maybe you want to see where the binary files are created. Okay, so when it compiles just in time or it compiles ahead of time, it probably calls this routine. So how do you make a binary file? Well, you have to make a table with all the imports and exports. For my code, I make it position independent with a patch table of for absolute addresses, if you go to the download directory if you go on my website and you go into the miscellaneous files for download, then if you go into utils, you'll find a file called binrep. Now, yesterday we talked about how to move a file into or out of VMware. So binrep, this is for, it reports if I say binrep. Now, did you know that F4 will let you pick a file name? So if I press F4, then I go to the kernel.binc. The C means it's contiguous. That's important for the loader. The loader will only load contiguous files. That means the blocks are stored one next to the other. So this is binrep applied to kernel.bin. Okay, we ran out of buffer. So if we say docmax, then if we say binrep F4. Now the kernel is loaded first, so you might think it's strange that it has imports. How can you import anything if? And the answer is the imports are resolved when other modules are loaded or code is loaded. So these are relative I32 imports. These are there's a 32-bit number that has to be patched. All the code is stored in the lowest 2 gig. Okay, now there's a list of absolute addresses that have to be patched. Then there's the exports and imports. So what happens is when you can load a module with load. I don't encourage this anymore. Basically, I decided nobody needs to do binary files except the kernel and compiler. So if we go to the compiler, this could crash it or make it unusable. Okay, well, it loaded it. I'm going to go ahead and reboot. So the kernel has imports and exports. Now, if we say those imports and exports are put into the symbol table, and then when you include a header, it finds the address in the symbol table and it binds it with the header. Does that make sense? So in the kernel.bin, you have a list of exports. Maybe, for example, sys fixed area, and this is an address. Oh, this is not a good example. Sys I think sys run level. Oops. So sys run level is 7C2C. Does that look, if you're familiar with operating system development, 7C00 is the location where it'll load a kernel. So if we look at the project file, it includes some headers. It includes some headers. Then it includes kernel start, and the order is, it keeps the same order in the binary file. So kstart is the first code that's in the binary file, and you saw that offset was near 7C00. That's because run level is let's take a look here. There's a header on the bin file which has a jump. So by the time you get to here, it happens to be 16 bytes. Then we have this jump instruction that's about 3 bytes. Then there's another 4 bytes, and then another 4 bytes. So what is that? 4 and 4 is 8, and 3 is 11, and 16 is 27. So let's see if the numbers check out. So 2C is 32 plus 12. I was hoping to exactly... Oh, do I have an alignment here. This aligns to, I guess that's... Is that a paragraph? No, there's... Wait. It's not bits, it's bytes. Oh, maybe I know. So a binary file starts with a header. Looks like, I thought it was 16, but it looks like it's bigger. So there's 4 plus 4 is 8. 8 plus 8 is 16, 24, 32. Okay, so the header is 32 bytes. And then it starts right here. So this is 33. So that's another couple bytes. It's aligned to 4. So 32 plus 4 is 36. This is makes it up to 40. This makes it up to 44. And so, did I do that right? Okay. This is 32 plus 4, 36, 40. I think it should be 44. What's 44 in hex? Is that 2C? Yeah, 2C. Okay. So we just confirmed the location. So what were we talking about? So when the kernel loads its own imports and exports, load kernel, it's very similar to the standard load command, and so that puts all the exports into the symbol table. So sys run level is an entry in the symbol table, and then what comes along, then there's a binding. I'm confused. Okay, kernel B. Okay, so when we load the headers, it binds this symbol, this export, we call this an export. It binds it with a C, what do you want to say, C element or something. This is a C variable. A C variable has a size. It might have a different class. So this binds it. That's what this underscore extern binds an export symbol. Anyway, so let's see if we can find something else to talk about. We can do some miracles, but we already have. Well, let's go see what's. We can do some miracles, but we already have. Okay, so nobody's watching. Let's go see what's. Okay, we can talk to God, I guess. Nobody's watching. Okay, enough.